Okay, there we go. We are recording. Like I said, when I'm doing this video and explaining this, there will be a lot of back and forth because the overall. It's not important that that whether an attached earlobe is recessive or dominant, or whether that your hairline is recessive or dominant. That stuff is really unimportant. It's just one of those things that it's just a demonstration, to give you practice with learning how dominant versus recessive works. That's the only reason. These traits could have been anything. It could have been shoe size or underarm stink, whatever it is. So yeah, that's why we're doing these, and that's why I will be going back and forth a lot. So that being said, let me share the screen and pull this up. And while I'm doing that, and I know you had mentioned that we're going to talk about the tables and how to fill the beginning parts of those tables out, for your pre-lab. So then my question is to you: do you have any other questions before we jump into that?
Um, I would probably have to look at it. Not that I can
Okay.
remember.
Okay. So let me take a look. Can you see the screen? Can you see the lab on the screen?
I can.
Good. I guess I might as well change this date because it is being updated once again. Because when I'm done with this video, I'm going to embed it on this sheet. So, yeah, obviously, the pre-lab is going to require you to define these words, answer a few questions, and then, like it says right here in green, which a lot of people seem to skip, despite the fact that it's highlighted in green. I'm glad you noticed. So let's take a look. We need to fill out the tables. So here's the pre-information you need to know, and I'm going to look at it too to refresh my memory because, again, smooth chin versus cleft chin, that's not important in the grand scheme of biology, right? But this is just, we're just using these again as examples, so we can have a better understanding of this relationship between dominant and recessive, regardless of what the trait is, right? So, or character. So here we see cleft chin is a dominant trait, right? Having a smooth chin is recessive. Here, having a free hanging earlobe, oh, right here, is dominant. See, I would switch that picture if I could, but it's not my picture. Anyway, free hanging earlobe, you can see here, is dominant. An attached earlobe is recessive, right? Widow's peak. The widow's peak is the dominant trait. You can see how it's got a little coming out there. And the non-widow's peak is the recessive trait. Also, let me point this out. I should have done this when we started the video. For anybody who's watching this video, if this is on YouTube, so at the bottom right, there's a little gear icon, and you can click that icon and change the speed of this video. So if I'm going too slow, feel free to, there's no reason, you're watching this in real time, so there's no reason you can't speed it up if you want. Or if for some reason I'm too fast for you, obviously you can slow it down. Anyway, interlocking fingers. When you just put your hands together naturally, what this is saying is if your if your left thumb goes on top of your right thumb like this, that's a dominant trait. If it's the other way around, that's a recessive trait. Make sense so far? Any questions?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Bent little finger. A dominant allele causes the last joint of the little finger to bend towards the fourth finger. So here we have, that is the dominant on the left, right? And if it's nice and straight, that is recessive. Okay. Hitchhiker's thumb. This characteristic, more precisely called distal hyperextensibility of the thumb, could be determined by, see, I'm having to read it to refresh my memory because, again, in the overall scheme of the biology, it's not an important thing, but some people can bend the last section of the thumb back almost perpendicularly, like that picture. Recessive allele for the ability to bend thumb way back, dominant for the inability. Okay. Anyway, so yes, in this case, a straight thumb is dominant, but if you can pull it back, that's recessive, right? Pigmented iris. This one I do happen to memorize. Basically, if you have blue eyes, and let's say green eyes too, for the sake of this, then you have the recessive, and if you have anything else, you have dominant. So if you have brown eyes, for example, you have dominant. Mid-digital hair. So we're talking about this part here. Expression of a dominant allele results in the hair of one or more fingers. All right, so if you have the hair, even if it's just only one of your four fingers, that is dominant. If they're all completely bald, that is recessive. Tongue rolls, if you can do it, that is the dominant. If you cannot do it, it's recessive. And I'm glad you've asked me to meet with you and make this video, because as I'm reading these descriptions, I think I might go in and add more descriptions to that. All right, so that's the first part. All that stuff made sense, right?
Yes.
Okay. So here, what we're going to do, I'm going to kind of jump ahead and then come back to this. What you and I are going to do is I'm going to help you fill this out, right? We're going to talk about whether you have a cleft chin or not, whether you have free earlobes or not, right? That's what you're going to fill out. Then later when we get in class, we're going to take everyone's numbers, right? So we're going to see how many people had cleft chin versus how many people did not have a cleft chin, right? So that's what these hypothesis questions are, right? So another way of this question, another way of asking this first question is, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Will there be more students with cleft chins or without, right? That's all that is, right? So you do need to answer this portion as your pre-lab. You can either like delete the answer that you think is not it, or I don't know, however, make it, maybe choose the one you think it is and bold it. I don't know. However you want to do it, I don't care. As long as it makes sense what your answer is. Now, this is probably the part that you and most people need help with, is this right here. So this is perfect. Let's go one-on-one with you. And then if people, as we're going through this, if they're watching the video, if they happen to match with what your situation is, they can write down your situation. If not, they just write down the opposite. So cleft chin, do you have a smooth or a dimpled cleft chin?
Smooth.
All right. So we're going to write down your phenotype. And to be honest, there's a few things you could write. And for you, for this demonstration, you could say like smooth, right? Because you have the smooth phenotype. Or recessive, right? Because the cleft chin is the recessive phenotype. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Or non-dimpled. I don't care, right? However you want to write it, that's how it's going to work. But just for simplicity, let's stick with smooth. So you have the recessive genotype, right? Because cleft chin is the dominant. So if you have the recessive phenotype, in order to have any recessive phenotype, that means you have to have two recessive versions of the gene, right? Two recessive alleles. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. You have to have, you have two alleles, right? One from your mom, one from your dad. For every gene you have two. Now, for you to have any recessive phenotype, both of your alleles, 100% of your alleles have to be recessive, right? So, for example, if you were big D, little d, you wouldn't have a smooth chin, right? Because even if you just with one copy of the dominant, you would have the dominant phenotype. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, the rest of this should be pretty quick and easy. So yes, you have a smooth chin. Therefore, your genotype has to be homozygous recessive, right? It has to be, in this case, little d, little d. How about free earlobes? Are your earlobes free or are they attached?
They're free.
All right. And again, I'm going to remind myself here, just make sure I'm not making any errors. Free earlobes. There we go. Free hanging earlobe is dominant. Attached is recessive. And you said yours are attached? I'm sorry.
They're free hanging.
Oh, free. Thank you. I should have wrote that down. All right. So I'm glad this is good. So this means you have the dominant phenotype. As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and write that this time. Dominant. Because it doesn't matter. Free, dominant, however you want to put it. Now, in this case, your genotype could be homozygous dominant or heterozygous. Does that make sense? Because either one of these is going to result in free hanging earlobes.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So again, for anybody watching this video, whenever you have the dominant phenotype, you have to write both of these down because we don't know which one you are. All we know is what your phenotype is. We don't know your genotype. So you have to write both possibilities down. How about widow's peak? Do you have that or not?
I don't.
So in this case, I'm going to put no, or I could put recessive. Actually, yeah, because recessive means you don't have it. So again, because it's recessive, you're little w, little w. Interlocking fingers. When you put your hands together naturally, does your left thumb go over your right or vice versa?
My left goes over the right.
Okay, I'm going to put left over right. Why not? L over R. Makes sense to me. And that's the dominant. I happen to remember that's dominant. So again, you could be big F, you could be homozygous dominant, or you could be heterozygous. You have to excuse me. I'm working from home at spring break. So if you hear any noise in the background, that is my son who's homesick.
Okay.
Anyway, bent little finger. When you put your pinkies together like this, there we go. Do they go away? Do they form a little V right there, or do they come together? Now the V needs to start to that little knuckle, because notice there is technically a tiny little V there, but does the V start at the knuckle or not for you?
No, it doesn't.
It does not. All right. So let me refresh myself. The dominant allele causes this, and you said you have the straight.
Right.
So okay, perfect. So you have recessive. Bent little finger. I'm going to put R for recessive. See, again, I'm just trying to use examples of all the different ways you can write your phenotype. So again, if you're recessive, that means you have to be homozygous recessive genotype. Little b, little b. Hitchhiker's thumb. Does yours straight, or can you bend it back like this without pushing it back? You know what I mean? Like my thumb is doing this right now. I don't have to push it back. It just does it.
It goes back.
It does go back. All right. Let me double check myself here. Some people can bend the last section of the thumb back almost perpendicular. Recessive ability way back, dominant for the ability to do this. Inability. Excuse me. So yes, recessive if you can do it, dominant if you can't. And you said yours is straight.
It goes back.
Oh, it does back. Good grief. I'm so sorry. Like I said, it's spring break. So yours goes back. That means you have the recessive allele for the ability to bend the thumb way back. All right. So hitchhiker's thumb. Another way you could put this, yes. If someone else doesn't have it, they could put no. Or they could put dominant or recessive or whichever. All right. So you have the ability to do that. We just read that that's a recessive ability. The phenotype is recessive. Therefore, your genotype has to be homozygous recessive. Little h, little h. Do you have blue or green eyes?
No.
All right. So we can just put no. And this is one of those I happen to have memorized. That means you are recessive. So without a doubt, it is homozygous recessive. Genotype, little p, little p. Mid-digital hair on all four of your fingers, or on any of the four fingers, do you have hair on the mid-digit, right? So that means, again, not this part, but this part. This would be better if they had little lines right there, but they don't. But do you have any of your hairs have hair? I mean, any of your fingers have hair right there?
No.
Okay. Expression of a dominant allele results in the hair. All right. So that means you have the recessive. Just another way you could write this down is bald, right? That's one way to describe that phenotype. That is recessive. So you are homozygous recessive genotype. Therefore, it is little m, little m. Tongue roller. Can you roll your tongue?
No.
No, that happens to be recessive. I happen to have that one memorized. So that's little r, little r. Perfect, right?
Okay.
And that's all you need to do for now, or anybody else watching this video. Then you just take all that same information you just did, and you're going to put it here, right? So literally, if you wanted to, and I'm going to do it, I'm going to copy. I'm going to highlight this. Yep. I'm going to copy it and bring it over here. Highlight what I want to paste it into. Yep. Control V. There we go. And I'm done. Make sense?
Yes, it does now.
All right. And what I could do, and if anybody's watching this video, please go ahead and do this. I didn't require it because that's just more directions. It makes things more complicated, and I don't like to do that. So if anyone's watching this video and wants to get a head start, in any case, in this case, on the second table, on any case where you have dominant or recessive, just take turns bolding one or the other. So I'll start with dominant here, and then on your next one, I'll go to recessive. I mean, good grief, my nomenclature, I'm so sorry. If you happen to have a dominant phenotype, which means you have two different one of the other genotypes, we don't know which one, take turns making one of them bold. So this first one, I did homozygous dominant being bold. On this next one, I'm just going to randomly say that the heterozygous is bold. And that's it for you. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And again, I'm not going to require that because we'll just do that in lab. So yeah, that's it. And like I said, what we'll do in lab is, everybody will know this. So as a group, I'll stand up there and I'll ask everybody, raise your hand if you have a smooth chin, raise your hand if you have a dimpled chin. And that's when we'll fill all this out.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it. Trying to think of some other important information, but I don't really think I have any. I guess if you really, really wanted to be prepared, you could start looking in your table, your textbook, and maybe look up some videos on how to do a Punnett square, stuff like that. But I don't really have any other advice. I think that pretty much covers it. Do you have anything?
No, I don't. I was just having a hard time with that. So
I can see why. Yeah. So I'm glad we cleared it up. Well, if you think of anything else, let me know. And I thank you for letting me record this so I can share it with your classmate and embed it in the lab itself, so future students can see it. So I guess that's it. Let me
Let me
stop.
see this one question. Wait a minute. 2 individuals to expire.
Stop recording.
Okay.